Greetings, everyone. Peace to you all. Welcome to a special explanatory episode of Praiseworthy Reviews, where we go through video games to see if they are excellent and commendable. Today, we will be explaining what is a praiseworthy review. What are we doing exactly? This channel, Praiseworthy Entertainment, is based off of Philippians 4, verse 8. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. Philippians 4 verse 8. So our goal is to be looking at entertainment, particularly video games, and be thinking, is there anything worthy of praise here? Is there anything here useful for building up, as per 1 Corinthians? All things are lawful, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful, but not all things build up. 1 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 23. To that end, a praiseworthy review evaluates games based on 5 criteria: fun factor, educational value, cultural value, spiritual value, and cost. 4 of those criteria are based off of ideas mentioned in my Should Christians Play Video Games video, plus cost. In order to evaluate games based on these criteria, I do play through the whole story of what I would consider the main ending of every game, or I do not do the review. While I am not always a completionist, I generally try to do a lot of the side content and do a lot of the achievements, as long as they aren't ridiculously time-consuming or don't require a second playthrough. I also usually put more effort into the video editing and make the video match my script, but I actually already made a review of Hollow Knight that I will release later on, so you can expect a better edited review of Hollow Knight in a video coming up soon. For this video, however, you can just enjoy an attempt at a Hollow Knight pantheon in the background while I explain how I evaluate each criterion. So without further ado, let's jump in. The first criterion, the fun factor, is as it sounds. How much fun is the game? How much entertainment and recreational value does the game provide? Does it help us rest and relax? This criterion is perhaps what most traditional reviews focus on: the core gameplay loop and mechanics. I will try to cover the variety of content presented, including optional content. Sometimes this may include the narrative if the way the game approaches the narrative is part of the gameplay, although I usually try to leave the narrative to be evaluated with the rest of the artistic disciplines in the cultural section. Afterwards, I will assign an arbitrary star rating based on my subjective experience of how fun the game is. The stars are not meant to be used quantitatively. I'm not adding them all up to rate each game based on 25 stars. Instead, the stars are there more for you to know how I feel about where the game is in terms of that criterion. To me, 3 stars means average in terms of fun in gameplay. It's not painful, but it's not great. 2 stars or 1 star means that the gameplay mechanics detract from the game overall, whereas 4 or 5 stars means that the game is very engaging. The next criterion, educational value, is a sort of catch-all category for any useful knowledge or skills that can be gained from playing the game. This can be learning facts about the real world, improving executive function, improving your logic, or teaching you how to exercise, for example. For most games, this will probably be the motor skills that it helps you develop. For me, this means that oftentimes difficult games will score higher on this criterion than easy games, but that might not always be true. In short, does the game help you learn something or help you improve in some way? Is the game personally edifying? The cultural value criterion kind of has 2 parts. The first part is about the sort of artistic experience the game is. How good is the music, the sound effects, the voice acting? What about the visual aesthetic? I will also try to incorporate the narrative in here, but this will sometimes depend on how important the narrative is to the overall experience of the game. The second part of cultural value is more about its cultural impact. Games that have huge franchises beyond video games will be strong in this area, such as Marvel or Star Wars or Harry Potter, as will games that have sold a lot. This may be difficult for me to assess in newer games because the sales may not be immediately clear. So again, the cultural value criterion consists of both of these parts. How beautiful an artistic experience is it, and how much will this help you relate to others and perhaps even share the gospel? The spiritual value criterion also consists of 2 aspects. The first is about positive and negative spiritual content. This is obviously subjective to a certain extent. Everyone gauges these things differently. How violent is too violent? How sexual is too sexual? I will try to point out any possibly objectionable content, but this is hard to do for a wide audience. Some games I would not let my young children play, but do not find really objectionable for teens and adults. There may also be content that is positive, like positive portrayals of Jesus, Christianity, or the church. The second aspect of spiritual value is about the message of the game. What are the themes of the game trying to tell you? Does the narrative convey ideas that are in line with scriptural teaching or against it? If a game disagrees with the Bible, then I will evaluate the game with a lower star rating. If I think the message is in line with Christian values and well conveyed, this will result in a higher rating. Again, this is subjective to some extent, but for most games that have a strong narrative component, I will also create a biblical themes video where you can better see what I believe each game is saying and what scriptures I think agree or disagree with the game's message. The final criterion that I will evaluate the game on is cost. All games cost us two things: time and money. For time, I will evaluate this both for the time rich and the time poor. That means that ideally, the game has a lot of content and replay value for the time rich. At the same time, it is best if the main story of the game does not take more than 30 to 40 hours to complete, or the narrative accessibility becomes very difficult. To me, the narrative should not require a huge time commitment because then the length can become an obstacle in completion. For example, I was able to get to the Hades ending fairly quickly, but because of the length of the game, the epilogue, what I consider the actual ending, took a very long time to complete, and I did not get to it until several years later. As for money, I will evaluate the game based on its price at time of recording. This can mean the standard MSRP or what kind of sale price you can normally expect on Steam. This means I am generally harder on AAA games, especially ones that don't go on sale often, while giving higher scores to indie games that have more reasonable retail prices. I will also take into account the common gamer standard of dollar to hours of gameplay ratio. Finally, I will give the game an overall rating. The overall rating is one of 5 hopefully self-explanatory descriptions. Please note that I do not add up the stars and then create cutoffs for each tier. The stars are only there to inform you about how I feel about how the game fares in each criterion. The reason I don't do a quantitative approach is because 5 stars in fun does mean that for 2 different games, I think that they're both very fun. But it doesn't mean that I think they are equally fun. So this means that the star ratings are not meant to be an absolute quantity. The overall rating then is how I feel after having evaluated the game based on all of the above criteria. Priority purchase means that this should be a top priority for purchase and playing for most players. Genre gem means that I think it's one of the best for its genre, but the genre may be less accessible for some people, or something about the game may prevent it from being a priority purchase. Sales selection means that I think the game is still reasonably good, and I would probably purchase it or have purchased the game even without the intention of reviewing it, but probably not unless it is on sale. Curiosity collectible means I would only purchase the game if I were really curious or if I particularly liked a previous game. Curiosity collectible doesn't mean I recommend against it, only that I personally would not purchase it and do not think it's even something I would look for in a sale, unless I was really curious. Retail regret is the only rating that I would say is a negative rating, one that means I would actively recommend against buying it. This does not mean the game itself has no good aspects, only that I may recommend against purchase for one reason or another. One final note regarding overall ratings. It's likely that I will give mostly high ratings in this area because in the end, this channel and gaming are both hobbies of mine. As a Christian, I have many responsibilities, which means that I will usually try to spend my hobby time on, well, good games. I will try to actively avoid playing games that I think I will not enjoy or cannot in good conscience recommend. I hope this does not convey a sense of score inflation, but the idea that the games that I do evaluate have been curated and filtered. What that means is I try to choose good games to review. If you stuck with me until the end of this video, thank you so much. I know a video like this is not particularly exciting, but hopefully it gives you context for all my review videos. That's all I have for you in this video. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If this video blessed you in some way, please consider watching some of my other videos, subscribing, or sharing with me some of your thoughts in the comments below.